Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestling News 365. Hope everyone is doing very well. As always, there is a ton of news stories to get into today, so let's talk about the world of Impact Wrestling. Let's talk about Braun Strowman. Of course, as we get closer and closer to Bound for Glory, or Braun for Glory, as some people are calling it, people are just waiting with bated breath, with anticipation of the former Universal Champion making his debut with Impact Wrestling. It does look like this is more and more likely because the former Universal Champion himself, Braun Strowman, was spotted out with Impact Wrestling Executive Vice President Scott D'Amore, indicating that a deal between Impact and Strowman is very close. Now, Adam Scherr, or is it Shea? Let's go with Shea, known as Braun Strowman in WWE, was reportedly spotted meeting with Impact Wrestling Executive Vice President Scott D'Amore. This is a report that comes from PW Insider. Now, the two were seen talking at a hotel bar near the Motor City Comic-Con in Detroit, Michigan. This comes Sunday evening. Now, D'Amore apparently arrived first and waited until Shea joined him. The two men then sat for a long time as the discussion carried on. Now, it was also noted that Impact is working on several surprises for the Bound for Glory pay-per-view next weekend, so it's possible that Scherr may make his debut that night. Now, there's no confirmation right now if Braun Strowman signed with anyone, let alone Impact Wrestling. We've seen those reports that Impact have been interested in Braun Strowman since the moment he was released earlier this year, let alone over the course of the last few weeks. We know Impact Wrestling really wants Braun Strowman. We do know that Impact has reached out to Strowman on several occasions. We also know that AEW has had a conversation with Braun Strowman. We also know that MLW has had a conversation with Braun Strowman, but Court Bauer confirmed that neither Major League Wrestling and Braun Strowman, they couldn't come to terms. So that's not happening. But as I mentioned, there's still no confirmation on Strowman signing a deal since it was released from WWE earlier this year. Of course, if we get any confirmation on Braun Strowman going to Impact, to AEW, to whatever company it may be, we will talk about it extensively here on the channel. We followed this story for a while. Now, it was reported back in early October, so earlier this month, that Impact was, quote, heavily interested in bringing Strowman in to the promotion. It was also in early October when there was news that Strowman was in talks with MLW, like I mentioned, but the two sides were unable to come to terms on an agreement, which basically means money and dates. There was a rumor, wasn't there, when Strowman was first released by WWE, he was asking for this significant amount of money. He put a dampener on that report, said, look, I haven't even spoken to anyone about appearances, let alone money or anything like that, so we don't know about that. His most recent match, we'll call it a match, was a cinematic presentation during it was against EC3 during the Control Your Narrative event on Saturday, October 2nd. We know Impact Wrestling really wants to sign Braun Strowman. We know the interest is there when it comes to Braun Strowman. I do have some more information, and I'll share my opinions on the meeting, if you will, all that kind of stuff. So Dave Meltzer has mentioned several times that Strowman is in talks with Impact Wrestling. There's speculation, as I mentioned, that the Monster Among Men will make his debut for the company at Bound for Glory next weekend. Again, Fightful Select have also reported that there's heavy interest in Braun joining Impact Wrestling. The company have been making major plays to sign the former WWE star. All indications and all indicators here suggest that Strowman is going to go to Impact. Now, between now and next weekend, when Bound for Glory is a contract going to be signed? Maybe not. Maybe not. Impact Wrestling, I've mentioned here a million different times that Impact Wrestling is very, very fluid and flexible when it comes to contracts. They'll let someone appear on their programming if they haven't got a contract with the company. They'll let someone appear on their programming if they're still in negotiations, because they realize that Braun Strowman signing with Impact Wrestling is a big deal. Now, again, people might the shine or the glow, if you will, might be off Braun Strowman, and it might not be what it was a couple of years ago, but this is still a massive, massive signing. As we get closer and closer to Bound for Glory, and as these stories continue to come out, I mentioned before that, I wouldn't rule out Strowman wrestling for AEW or signing with AEW, but as we get closer to Bound for Glory, it's becoming more and more apparent that certainly Impact Wrestling is in the pole position when it comes to signing him. And I think it's almost inevitable that Strowman will show up for Bound for Glory next weekend. I think it's exciting that the report from PW Insider says that Strowman's going to be one of several surprises at next week's show. What those surprises will be, who knows? There were plenty of WWE stars released earlier this year. We also know that it's going to be an event that's going to feature talents from several promotions, of course, Impact, but AEW, AAA, New Japan Pro Wrestling. Now, in fairness, all of the people advertised on the card either from one of those 4 promotions. So we know that they're being legitimate in terms of the companies that are going to be appearing on that event, but there are going to be more names certainly that show up. Slammiversary, they did it this year for Slammiversary in the same vein that they did it last year for Slammiversary. That's we were going to have lots of surprises there. What those other surprises may be, I don't know. Bray Wyatt, I don't think Bray Wyatt is a possibility. I think, isn't it? Bound for Glory if it's next weekend. Wyatt's contract expires just before Halloween, so I think it is potentially a possibility. So Wyatt could show up, I guess, as well. I still think that Bray Wyatt's going to go to AEW, but look, who knows? Who knows what could happen with that, right? Wyatt, just because he shows up in Impact doesn't mean he's not going to show up in AEW. I still think if Wyatt's going to sign a contract with one company, it will be AEW. We know that Impact is, of course, interested in Bray Wyatt. Why wouldn't they be? And it's the same thing with Braun Strowman. Why wouldn't they be? And I talk about this. I've said this several times when I spoke about Braun and spoke about him going to Impact Wrestling, is that Braun Strowman, and I know this is a while ago, but 2016, 2017, 2018, Braun Strowman was one of the most popular stars in WWE. It's funny because we've got Crown Jewel later this week for WWE, which we're doing a watch-along for and a post-show, but when I think back to Crown Jewel in 2018, when Roman Reigns had just vacated the Universal Championship and Strowman was facing Brock Lesnar, and everyone went, well, of course, Braun's got to win. I mean, he should have won way before then. He should have beaten Brock Lesnar at No Mercy in 2017, or there were certainly several arguments in 2017 and 2018 that he should have won the Universal Championship, and he didn't. And this was a guy that had a load of momentum behind him, either as a heel or as a babyface. And like with many things in WWE nowadays, just the creative and the mismanagement of top stars that have a ton of potential and can make money for the company. It's astounding, isn't it, that a company that makes billions of dollars, Vince McMahon's a billionaire, and he should be way richer than that with some of the talent, some of the ideas he has that gets presented to him. The fact that we're talking about Braun Strowman being a free agent, that we're talking about Bray Wyatt being a free agent, is indicative of a massive issue in WWE. How can they mismanage 2 characters that were so over periods of time and the fans were so behind? I tell you how they do it, by bad creative and bad decision making, and just now they've got a problem with age on the roster. We've got so many old people on the roster because you can't make any new stars, because when they get given to you, like Bray Wyatt the Fiend or like Braun Strowman when he was super over in 2017, 2018, they just mismanage him and they have, lose big matches and just terrible creative and terrible presentation. It's ridiculous. The fact that we're talking about Braun Strowman likely debuting at Bound for Glory for Impact Wrestling is insane when you really think about it. And the fact that it's been normalized is insane as well. So it's a huge pickup for Impact Wrestling if it indeed does happen, which I think it will. Who does he face off against instantly? It's interesting because he could show up, say, we spoke about W. Morrissey and the Call Your Shot Gauntlet. And obviously he's going to be entering at number 20. I wouldn't be shocked, honestly, wouldn't be shocked if, say, W. Morrissey enters at 20, so he's the final person that enters, but who enters at number 19? Braun Strowman shows up, Titan, Adam Shear, whatever he's going to be going as, shows up at 19, and then he wins it, and then maybe we get Braun Strowman versus Josh Alexander, maybe we get Braun Strowman versus Minoru Suzuki, maybe we get Braun Strowman versus whoever, Moose. There are plenty of names in Impact Wrestling that I'm very interested to see Braun Strowman face off against, so it's a very exciting time. I'm excited about Bound for Glory. I think the card's very strong. There has been a little bit of a, I don't want to say a lack of a buzz, but there certainly has, and the ratings do reflect this, and we're going to talk about this in a second, but there has been maybe somewhat of a subdued buzz when it comes to Bound for Glory, but news like this gets people excited. I'm surprised that Strowman and D'Amore met so openly in public. One would lead to thinking that maybe that's on purpose, because they know pro wrestling. Braun Strowman knows pro wrestling. Scott D'Amore certainly knows pro wrestling. He knows if you want to keep something a secret, why would you meet out in public at a hotel bar? Surely they would know that. People, you never know who's going to be around you, and people with social media and camera phones and the ability to post anything on social media at a moment's notice like that. Why would you meet out in public unless you wanted people to know that you were meeting? And if they reportedly sat there for a long time to ensure someone better spot us, we were here long enough, that kind of leads me to think that maybe it was on purpose. I don't know. Maybe they'll be cursing, going, "Oh, I can't believe it." Or maybe it's a case of, look, this is a case of organically building up some hype and suspense for Bound for Glory next weekend. I think it's probably the latter, to be honest with you. So Braun Strowman could be headed to Impact Wrestling very, very, very soon. I mentioned we're going to talk about the Impact Wrestling ratings, and I know when we speak about it here on the channel about the ratings, some of you guys say, well, it's not fair. There are different ways to consume Impact Wrestling. There are different ways to watch the product, whether it is on whatever it may be, YouTube or Impact Plus or social media or whatever. Don't worry, I get it. But there is a trend here. There really is a trend, and it's not great when it comes to Impact Wrestling, especially when you compare it to earlier this year, which I keep doing. Because Thursday's taped post-Knockouts Knockdown edition of Impact Wrestling on AXS TV drew only 89,000 viewers, according to Nielsen via Showbuzz Daily. This is down nearly 20% from last week's 111,000 viewers for the Knockouts Knockdown Go Home show. Now, Thursday's episode drew a 0.03 rating in the key 18 to 49 demographic, which is actually up from last week's 0.02 key demo rating. Now, this week's episode of Impact did not rank in the cable top 150 for the second week in a row. The episode 3 weeks ago ranked 142nd in the cable top 150 in the key demo and 140 in viewership. This week's episode of Impact drew the fewest viewers since the July 1st episode, which was the second lowest total viewership of the year so far, and the third total lowest viewership since the show debuted on AXS TV in December 2019. Let me repeat that, not just because I butchered it, but it's important to say this week's episode was the third least watched show since Impact moved to AXS TV in December of 2019. That's prior to the pandemic, okay? And what's the excuses now? What is the excuses now? It's not good. Now, Thursday's Impact viewership was down, as I mentioned, nearly 20% from the same week before. The viewership, this is the real, I think, the real damning statistic about this. And this is the problem I think that they've had since they moved back to Thursday nights, and especially since fans have been back inside the Impact Zone there in Skyway Studios, is that Impact viewership for Thursday was down 42% from the same week in 2020. That's nearly half. They've nearly halved their viewership in a year. That's during the pandemic. The crazy thing about Impact, and I think this is really important to state here, the crazy thing about Impact is they actually had good ratings in the pandemic. And since we're sort of coming out of it now and fans are coming back inside the arena, the ratings and the viewership has gotten worse. That's crazy. That's crazy. Now, yes, Thursday, they did have strong competition. You had the Major League Baseball Division Series game between Los Angeles and San Francisco on Fox. You also had the NFL game between Philadelphia and Tampa Bay on Fox as well. So that's the problem, right? You've got two strong sporting events. You've got the baseball, you've got the football. And it's something that they didn't necessarily have to compete with when they were on Tuesdays. So there are lots of different factors here. That is fair. There are lots of different factors here. Obviously, there's strong competition from sports. There's fans back inside the arena, which means spoilers get out, which we know, especially when it comes to Impact Wrestling, actually means less people are going to watch because they're just going to read the results online and not watch, or make a decision to watch or not watch. Most of the time not watch because they've seen what's going to happen. And 3, it's a change in night as well. They were doing better on Tuesdays when there were no fans inside the arena. It's crazy, isn't it, when you think about that? When you talk about WWE and being inside the Thunderdome, and sometimes their shows were taped, right, when it was at the Performance Center, and their point of view was, because the ratings were going down, their point of view was, when we get back to having fans, the ratings will go up. And they have a bit. Certainly SmackDown has. Raw, not so much, but the ratings have gone back up. You look at AEW, they were sort of saying the same thing of, once we get back on the road, once we get back into inside arenas, the ratings are going to go up and the viewership's going to go up, and they have. But Impact's kind of like the opposite to that. They're the polar opposite to it. Them actually performing inside of an empty arena actually benefited them because nobody knew what was going to happen. The spoilers didn't come out. You actually had to watch the show. And there was more buzz surrounding Impact Wrestling earlier this year with the AEW working relationship that they had and the New Japan working relationship that they had. And it has kind of tailed off at this point. We do expect people from AEW to appear on the show. Christian Cage is the Impact World Champion. We do expect people from New Japan to appear on the show. Minoru Suzuki's coming. Jay White was there for a hot minute right after Slammiversary. But has it really affected any change in terms of the viewership? No, people have just kind of got numb to it and used to it. And I think they really are feeling the effects of moving back to Thursday nights, even though traditionally that was Impact's home for all those years on Spike. But Tuesday night was actually way more beneficial for them on AXS TV. Earlier this year and towards the end of last year, this is why I find it so crazy, is that, so you've got this episode now, or last week, that was the third lowest viewed episode ever on AXS TV. You know, fast forward 12 months ago, or just under 12 months ago, they were doing the highest number they'd ever done on AXS TV when Kenny Omega made his debut as the AEW World Champion right after Winter is Coming. This was in December. So how can you go from having the most people ever tune into an episode of Impact Wrestling on AXS TV in December of 2020, and now you're in October of 2021 and you've got the third lowest viewed episode ever? Something's happened there. Something really has happened. And yes, we pointed that out. Strong competition from sports, but also the fans being back inside the arena and spoilers getting out, and the shift to Thursdays. It's not benefited Impact Wrestling at all. And I know that if they'd have stayed on Tuesdays, they would get destroyed because they'd be going up against NXT. But is this the new sort of reality that Impact Wrestling has to live with? Is this why they've decided, you know what, we need to go to something like that YouTube Ultimate Insiders because we need to get people watching somehow and make more money doing it? I don't know. It's damning. It is damning. And I've spoke about this several times because the evidence has kind of been there. They've been sort of struggling, they're in the low 100s, but sometimes they struggle to get over it. And now 89,000, and that's when I think it's going to start becoming difficult, I think, for like to attract a Braun Strowman or a Bray Wyatt. If you're Bray Wyatt, I know people say television ratings and viewership figures don't matter as much in 2021, and they don't. It's far more diverse. I get it. Like I said, there's so many ways to consume content, whether it's YouTube, whether it's social media, whether it's just online in general, or whatever it may be. I get it. But people like Bray Wyatt and Braun Strowman do look at that and go, wow, under 90,000 people watching on a Thursday night? That's not great. Well, why? That doesn't look good. And when I've brought this up in the past, people say, well, internationally, they're watched by a lot of people. That's true, too. Over here in the UK, Impact Wrestling is very popular. They sold out arenas over here in the UK. That's how popular they were. And they're still very popular over here. And I get Impact Wrestling's viewership is kind of different because it's kind of social media and it's kind of digital and there's lots of different diverse ways. But you can't sugarcoat that last year they were doing the most people they'd ever done on AXS TV, and fast forward a year later, and they're nearly doing the worst numbers that they've ever done. How does that happen? And maybe them going to Vegas after Bound for Glory will help that. But like I said before, I really do think they have to look at finding a way of when you attend an Impact Wrestling television taping, whether you sign, a confidentiality agreement or something. They've got to try something to try and keep that suspense and bring back that feeling of I have to tune in on Thursday because I don't know what's going to happen. Because this is what we kind of see. Like, they'll have an event or they'll have a television tapings, and that first episode, the ratings are relatively high or high-ish, even if people still know what's going to happen. They tune in. But eventually, 4 or 5 weeks later, people have known about those results for 4 or 5 weeks. Nobody cares about what they're watching at that point. And I think that's a massive problem for Impact Wrestling right now. I really do. We spoke about Minoru Suzuki the other day. Of course, he's coming soon to Impact Wrestling. We know when, though, because it's now official that New Japan Pro Wrestling star Minoru Suzuki will make his Impact Wrestling debut after the Bound for Glory pay-per-view. Now, as noted, Impact announced previously that Suzuki would be making his debut for the promotion in the near future. They had a coming soon teaser promo, and it was speculated that he would debut after Bound for Glory as they're already taped up to the pay-per-view. Well, in an update, Impact Wrestling announced yesterday that Suzuki will make his debut at the TV taping scheduled for Sunday, October 24 and Monday, October 25 at Sam's Town live in Las Vegas. These are the first tapings that will be held after Bound for Glory on Saturday, October 23rd. Now, of course, it's always possible that Suzuki makes a special appearance at Bound for Glory. He would be in town, but he's not been announced for the show as of writing. I'm assuming that he will show up because, again, if he's in town, then why wouldn't he? Why wouldn't they? And we've just said that Impact Wrestling are speaking about having many surprises for Bound for Glory. So, again, I wouldn't be shocked if Josh Alexander wins the Impact World Championship and the show closes with Minoru Suzuki coming to the ring or staring him down, or maybe Braun Strowman will. I don't know. But I think Minoru Suzuki will show up at Bound for Glory. And I'm interested to see who he feuds with because, again, Braun Strowman coming in maybe would indicate that Suzuki wouldn't challenge Josh Alexander. Although I think he will. I think it'll be Suzuki versus Alexander. And I think Strowman might feud with, say, a W. Morrissey to start things off with, or a Moose. But make no mistake, eventually, Braun Strowman's winning that Impact World Championship. That's happening. No doubt about that. Finally, Impact Wrestling are going to be paying tribute to Daffney this week, because Impact Wrestling will be doing a tribute to Daffney during the Thursday, October 28 episode of Impact in 60. Actually, that's next week, rather. As reported previously, the former WCW and TNA star passed away at the age of 46 in September. Impact Wrestling also paid tribute to Daffney at the Knockouts Knockdown pay-per-view with an opening ceremony and Monsters Ball match. Impact in 60 will air on AXS TV. Now, it feels crazy that Daffney passing away actually happened in September, and we're nearly halfway through October now. Just time flies so quickly, but it doesn't change how precious it is, and it still is a really tragic situation. And good for Impact Wrestling for paying tribute to a really influential knockout in their history. But look, guys, as always, it's just one man's opinion. What are your thoughts on all of these Impact Wrestling news stories we've spoken about today? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll do my best to respond and reply to all of your comments. Really enjoy interacting with you guys, talking about Impact Wrestling, AEW, WWE, New Japan Pro Wrestling, all things pro wrestling here on the channel. So be sure to get involved in the community. Drop a comment below. All opinions are welcome. If you have enjoyed this video, please do smash the like on the like button too. Really does help us out here on YouTube. Go to the rankings and get into people's recommendation feeds if they haven't seen our videos previously. But most importantly, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to Wrestle News 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right hand corner of the screen right now. Or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video, along with another video for you to watch. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or having come across this video today. And I'll speak to you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.